My parents think it's selfish of me to go to college when that money could go toward my sister's wedding. She dropped out of school, after all, but I show them just how selfish I really am when I turn to my grandparents for help. I'm 18, in my last year of high school, and my plan has always been to go to college. It's what I've been working toward for years. I stayed focused, kept my GPA at a perfect 4.0, and aimed to get into a good university, but none of that seems to matter in this family where academic achievement is worth less than a wedding. My sister Ariel is 24 and has taken a very different path. She dropped out of high school at 16 and has been working in shops ever since. A few months ago, she got engaged to her boyfriend of 8 months, and my family has been obsessed with wedding plans ever since. So I guess I should correct myself, academic achievements aren't just worth less than a wedding, they're worth less than the wedding of two people who barely know each other. And don't get me started on the dropout thing. Here's some context. When I was born, my grandparents on my dad's side created a college trust fund for me. They did the same for Ariel, but when she dropped out, her share was supposedly set aside for future projects, though no one ever explained what that meant. I never paid much attention to it growing up, but now it's suddenly at the center of everything. Last weekend, my parents called a family meeting. They started by saying how excited they were about Ariel's engagement and how much they wanted to help her have the wedding of her dreams. Then came the part that completely blindsided me. They suggested I postpone college for 3 years so the family could focus on Ariel's big wedding year. They said everyone would be too busy with The Little Mermaid's wedding to help me start my college life. Yes, they actually said that last part. The Little Mermaid is my not-so-affectionate nickname for my sister, who's more Ursula than Ariel if we're being honest. This whole transitioning nonsense, like I'm boarding a space shuttle and need their assistance, is about one thing. They'd been talking to Ariel about using my college fund to help pay for her wedding, which, by the way, is projected to cost $200,000. And note the word projected. Everyone knows projections are rarely accurate, so it'll probably cost even more. Their reasoning? Since I'm a good student and likely to get scholarships, I supposedly don't really need the money, which is a lie. I'm not getting a full ride. I'll still need that money for tuition, while Ariel supposedly needs it more for her dream wedding. They even tried to frame it as a win-win. 3 years would give them time to save up again for me while I explore my options, work, and travel. Here's the shocking news for my parents: I don't want to travel or find myself. I want to go to college. That's what I've been working for, not to blow over $200,000 on a guy who probably doesn't even know how to spell his own last name. I stayed calm throughout the meeting, but inside, the anger was simmering so hard it nearly spilled over. Afterward, I drove straight to my grandparents' house to tell them what was happening. It was their money, their trust fund, and I was sure they had no idea about my parents' ridiculous plan. My grandmother's face changed from that of a sweet old lady who might bake you cookies and make you hot chocolate into that of someone ready to go to war. Entitled parents, yes, there are plenty, and someone had to stop them. What I didn't know until then was how firm my grandparents were about the trust being strictly for education. They immediately called my parents and Ariel for an emergency family meeting. My parents tried to stall, saying they had obligations and that tomorrow would be better, but my grandparents said now, and now it was. At that meeting, everything came out. The trust fund was legally set up so that the money could only be used for educational purposes: no weddings, no trips, and definitely no marriages to strangers. Then they revealed something I hadn't known. Over the years, they had already given Ariel additional financial support to help her get her GED or start a business, money separate from the trust. Apparently, she never followed through on anything, and my grandparents had grown increasingly frustrated with her lack of initiative. The meeting didn't go well for my parents or Ariel. My parents accused me of gossiping with my grandparents and making them look bad. Ariel burst into tears, saying she just wanted to be happy, and I couldn't stand it. Since then, my mom has sent me several articles about how student debt isn't that bad and how, if I can convince my grandparents to release the trust, they'll help me transition and we'll all be happy with the things we want in life. My response? I'm staying with my grandparents. They've assured me my college fund is safe, and made it clear that in this family, you don't negotiate with terrorists. Hi, I already sent my early admission applications, and I have no intention of putting my plans on hold. Still, my parents won't let up. They haven't stopped calling and texting me, accusing me of being selfish and heartless for not supporting Ariel. My dad even suggested I should be grateful for the opportunity to help my sister because it would strengthen our family bond. I told them maybe Ariel should do something to strengthen those bonds, like stop bothering me about this, but apparently that's not how my parents defined family bonding. They're more the kind who ruin one daughter's life to favor the golden one. That kind of bonding, you know? I have this faint feeling, very faint, that my parents might be favoring my sister. Maybe it's just instinct, something I can sense in the air, or maybe it's because, for God's sake, they're blatantly favoring her and not even trying to hide it. Maybe if my parents or my sister had ever made the effort to go to college themselves, they'd already have come up with a better plan than this circus. A lot of people have been asking about my sister's fiancé. He's 26, works as a bartender, and from what I understand, he's not contributing much to the wedding costs. $200,000 is an impressive figure even for a successful lawyer. Imagine what it means for someone who relies on tips. I don't say that to insult him, but someone should be a bit more realistic about the kind of wedding they want. If it were a simple home celebration paid for with their own money and a few contributions from my parents, none of this would be happening. I honestly haven't had the chance to get to know him since they've only been together for 8 months, but I doubt my sister knows him much better either. I'll be genuinely surprised if they spend that much money only to end up divorced within a year after realizing their relationship doesn't work. Update 1 *. These past few weeks have been intense, but that's how my parents get when it comes to spoiling their favorite daughter. The day after my last post, they decided to try a new tactic. They showed up unannounced at my grandparents' house, where I've been staying, and pitched what they called a compromise. They proposed that I take a 1-year gap instead of 3 before starting college. During that time, they wanted me to help plan Ariel's wedding, which, according to them, would bring the family closer together and put all this tension behind us. In exchange, they said I could keep half of my college fund, and the other half would go to Ariel's wedding, something she too would have to compromise on by accepting. I can just imagine this so-called compromise and how hard it must be for the Little Mermaid not to serve caviar to her guests, as my grandmother put it. Since my grandfather was away, she handled it alone, and shut the idea down before I even had to speak. She told my parents flat out that the college fund was strictly for education, and no matter how many compromises they tried to invent, the answer was no. My parents left angry, muttering that I was ungrateful and that my grandparents were meddling in things they didn't understand. I can picture them arriving all cheerful, thinking this new plan would work, and then leaving with their heads down after realizing within seconds that it wouldn't. Not long after that incident, my acceptance letters started arriving. When I got the notification from my top choice university, one of the best schools with an amazing pre-med program, I was thrilled, and so were my grandparents. They asked if they could share the news on Facebook, and I said yes, thinking it was just an innocent way to celebrate. Unfortunately, that post triggered a storm at my parents' house. Ariel saw it and had a full-blown narcissistic meltdown, turning everything into her own pity parade about how she can never have anything nice in life and how I've always been the favorite child who gets everything. Before anyone criticizes my grandparents for using social media to feel proud of their granddaughter, let me tell you, it actually turned out to be a good thing. Ariel's meltdown revealed more than she probably intended. If you removed all the me's from her post, which made up about 70% of it, you'd find some very interesting details. She mentioned that she and her fiancé, who commenters have started calling Eric, because of the movie, had already booked several high-end vendors and wedding venues, leaving substantial deposits they couldn't afford. They did all that under the assumption they'd have access to my college fund. Later I learned that my parents had encouraged them, reassuring Ariel and her fiancé that the money was practically theirs, since they were working on getting it. When my grandparents found out, they were furious. They called another family meeting to address the situation. My parents tried to come up with excuses again until my grandparents said, no. They wanted everyone face to face, to feel each other's breath, when they announced that Ariel's trust fund would be dissolved and that the money would be used for something more important. I don't know exactly what that means yet. But since Ariel wasn't going to study after all, there was no reason to keep her trust fund. As a result, her wedding is now on hold, though she's still blaming me for everything. There's also an ongoing fight between my parents and her fiancé's family, because apparently they all feel equally entitled. His family believes that the bride's parents should shoulder most of the financial burden, which my parents would love to do, but can't. They're now trying to convince the other side to contribute, but they can't afford it either. So it's basically an all-out battle between two entitled families. Still, some good things have come out of this mess. For starters, I officially accepted my place at the university and am now working with the financial aid office to get everything sorted. My grandparents are handling all the trust fund documentation, making sure it's used exclusively for my education. On top of that, several aunts and uncles have reached out to show their support after hearing the full story. They've been incredibly kind and even offered to help me with anything I might need as I prepare for college. Now, I'd really like to ask for help understanding how to transition, or at least for someone to explain what that even means. I know what the word means, but I'm pretty sure my parents don't, or at least, they're not applying it correctly. As for my parents, they're currently losing their minds trying to deal with the deposits Ariel lost after her wedding plans fell apart. From what I've heard, they're trying to scale the whole thing down into something more manageable, but it'll have to be scaled down a lot. I don't think they're in a position to spend even $20,000 on a wedding, since even with the trust funds, they were never going to have over $200,000 to begin with. ****I don't know if my sister has a Sebastian in her life, like the crab from the movie. You could say she once had a cat who might have filled that role, but she eventually got bored of having one and abandoned him. I ended up taking care of him until he passed away at the soft, furry old age of 16. He was already older when I adopted him, he mostly slept and ate, but I don't recall him ever breaking into song or starting musicals under the sea. Update 2 * for those who were expecting to attend a grand, lavish, and, yes, I'll use the word, sumptuous wedding, I bring bad news, the wedding of the year has been officially cancelled. Not postponed, cancelled. Completely off the table, put to rest, buried 6 feet under. The chain of events that led to this still feels surreal, but looking back, it seems inevitable given how everything was unraveling. It all began when Ariel's fiancé's family started digging deeper after the trust fund fiasco. Naturally, they were alarmed when they discovered my parents' failed attempts to redirect my college fund toward the wedding. That initial concern led them to ask more questions, and what they uncovered was a web of half-truths and outright lies. Ariel had painted a rosy picture of herself as a small business owner, which turned out to be her very brief attempt at selling products for a multi-level marketing company. She also claimed she had some college education, but in reality, she hadn't even finished high school. And to think I believed her fiancé's family was like my parents. When they confronted her about these inconsistencies, instead of owning up to the truth, Ariel panicked and doubled down on her lies, weaving even more elaborate stories to cover her tracks. Naturally, that only raised more red flags for her fiancé and his family. The situation escalated until he finally realized he didn't really know the person he was about to marry. Apparently, 8 months together wasn't enough to see that he barely knew her, who could have guessed? Here comes the horror story for Ariel's fiancé. He discovered that she had secretly opened credit cards in his name to cover extra wedding expenses. She used those cards to make more deposits for venues and services, expecting to pay them off once she gained access to family money, by which, of course, she meant my college fund. The revelation caused a complete meltdown. His family was furious and even threatened legal action for credit card fraud. My grandparents, ever the peacemakers, tried to step in to mitigate the damage, negotiating a deal where they would cover the fraudulent charges in exchange for the fiancé's family dropping any potential lawsuits. But if you know my grandparents, you know that didn't happen, they left my parents to handle the fallout. Fortunately for Ariel, my parents had to step in and use some of their own savings to cover the costs and prevent a lawsuit. Surprisingly, it seemed to serve as a wake-up call for them, or maybe just crocodile tears, depending on what you believe. Today, they came to my grandmother in tears to have a heart-to-heart. My mom admitted they had chosen to ignore problems because it was easier than facing them head-on. My grandparents said her performance was quite convincing. But the tears weren't over yet. My grandparents told my parents that their permissiveness with Ariel had only harmed her in the long run, and now they had to face the consequences of their choices on their own. While all that was happening, Ariel went through her own period of reflection, or at least that's what it looked like. After her fiancé left and the wedding was cancelled, she locked herself in her room for almost a week, or at least that's what we knew from the enemy's front line. Maybe it was part of the pity plan: lock yourself in your room for a week, play the role of the abandoned bride, and then emerge as a stronger, more remorseful version of yourself. That's what it seemed like, given what came next. Out of nowhere, Ariel asked to meet with me and our grandparents. Yes, that meeting turned out to be a kind of apology, one clearly designed to prepare our grandparents for what was coming next. She really thought she could fool them. Ariel apologized, and it wasn't one of those lukewarm, obligatory apologies either. It was carefully rehearsed, with a full emotional range. She admitted that she had envied me for years, not because I got everything, as she used to say, but because I worked hard and made good decisions. She said that watching me succeed while her own life was falling apart had made her bitter, and that she'd convinced herself she deserved my college fund as a way to balance things out in her head. She'd clearly put a lot of emotion into her performance. Maybe that's what she'd been rehearsing all week behind closed doors. Then came the most unexpected part. Ariel looked at our grandparents and asked if their previous offer to support her education still stood. My grandparents decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. They told her they were willing to help, but only under strict conditions. She would have to start by earning her GED, attend financial counseling to learn how to manage money responsibly, and agree to regular check-ins to monitor her progress. The funds would be sent directly to the institution she chose to attend and would never pass through her or our parents' hands. That's when the cracks began to show in her act. She agreed, but only to buy time, clearly trying to figure out another way to get what she wanted. I don't know what to expect from this, but call me skeptical. I don't believe in overnight personal transformations. A week of reflection doesn't change a person like that. As for me, things are moving in a positive direction. My college plans are going full speed ahead, and I'm getting ready to move into the dorms early to participate in the summer program for incoming pre-med students. My grandparents have been amazing at helping me transition. They're doing things, and then doing a few more things, to make sure I'm fully transitioned into my new transition that I'm apparently transitioning now. I might even enroll in a transition course at college so I can graduate with a double degree, one in medicine and one in transitions. All jokes aside, my grandparents are fully involved in helping me settle in. And for those trying to explain to me that transitioning is a real thing, I know. I've said it before. It's just that my parents used the term like it was some grand, spiritual journey, when really, all it meant was driving me to campus, something literally anyone could do. Every year, thousands of teenagers go to college without needing a spiritual guide to do it. I'll be starting this new chapter without repairing ties with my family, because honestly, I don't think it's worth it. I'm an adult now, and I don't need to live with them anymore. Besides, I firmly believe that trying to reconnect would be a terrible idea. These people aren't going to change just because they've seen the light. They'll lick their wounds and go right back to being the same entitled people, maybe in a week, maybe in 3 days. In 5 years, if they're truly committed, maybe they'll have changed. But today, it's more likely I'll see a cow flying before I see my parents and sister acting like reasonable human beings. Maybe I'm wrong, but I know these entitled people too well. Update 3 *. It's been a few months since my last update, and I promised to share how things turned out. As I wrap up my first semester of college, I can genuinely say it's been an amazing experience. The pre-med program is as demanding as I expected, but it's exactly what I wanted. I've thrown myself into my coursework, learning more than I ever imagined, and I'm enjoying every second of it. I've also been lucky enough to make great friends who share my passions and ambitions. College life has kept me so busy that I haven't had time to post updates or share much, though not much else has happened worth mentioning. One of the highlights has been getting involved in research with one of my professors. The work is fascinating and has given me a glimpse of the kind of career I want to pursue. Family weekend was another high point of the semester. My grandparents came to visit, this time as regular civilians, bringing baked cookies and all those cozy things. It's nice to have grandparents who are so multifaceted, tender, loving, and a little bit unstoppable. But at the same time, they can switch to full combat mode in seconds. My grandparents loved that I took them on a tour of the campus and introduced them to my friends. They never got to experience that with my father, so I gave them the full proud parents treatment during their visit. Now, let's talk about Ariel and my parents. If you'd told me a year ago that she'd be where she is now, I'd have believed you. Not only did she fail to start the GED program our grandparents asked her to, but she's already found herself another man. I think they've been together for about 5 months now, which is why I can hear wedding bells ringing on the horizon again. They're not engaged yet, but I can imagine it happening soon. I just hope they've learned from their mistakes and don't expect my grandparents to fund another wedding. Then again, humanity has proven time and time again that it's the only species that trips over the same stone twice. True to their word, my grandparents haven't given her a single cent. I haven't spoken to her in months, not since the last time she came to my grandparents' house. But since she broadcasts her entire life on social media, though I don't follow her, it's not hard to know what's going on. Even the Kardashians would say she has a problem with overexposure, and that's saying something. Still, it's quite something that she's been in a relationship for 5 months and hasn't started putting down deposits for a new wedding yet. I also haven't been in touch with my parents, which some commenters find sad. They think this is a tragic ending because I've lost my parents and sister. But I think we're talking about different parents and a different sister, because for me, this is a happy ending. And if your idea of a happy ending involves us all forgiving each other, hugging in a big circle, and singing Kumbaya in a minor, allow me to laugh a little harder. I can't stand entitled, narcissistic people who play favorites. I've had my fair share of them here at university too. Apparently, you can't escape them anywhere. So, this is my version of a happy ending, at least for now. As for me, exciting opportunities have been coming my way. One of the research projects I worked on with my professor was selected to be presented at a conference next semester. It's a huge achievement for me, and hey, it's also a free trip. My grandparents might even travel to that city to see me. They don't care much about the conference itself, but they want familiar faces in the audience. Now that I'm home for winter break, meaning my grandparents' home, I get to enjoy life with a non-dysfunctional family. I haven't had to hear my parents' or my sister's voices, and that, to me, is pure happiness. Update 4 *. Anyone who has studied or is studying medicine knows how hard and demanding it can be. I'm not some prodigy who studies a few hours before exams and still gets straight A's. If I've made it this far, it's because of effort, and because I survived growing up with entitled parents who spoiled their golden child. I think that gave me the resilience to face life's challenges, and for that, I'm honestly grateful to them, even if that was never their intention. I haven't been involved in my sister's or parents' lives lately, but I've heard bits and pieces. My sister had another almost wedding with that same boyfriend I mentioned before. But when my parents told her how much they could contribute, which was far less than the dream wedding she wanted, she called the whole thing off. When her fiancé realized she was marrying him for the wedding and not for love, he left her. Because, you know, the important thing about marriage is love, not whether there's a giant party. But that's not even the real kicker, it's what happened next. My sister, who still lives with my parents, in case that wasn't clear, decided to throw a massive party at their house. My parents, exhausted from all the chaos lately, decided to take a short trip, just the two of them. That's when Ariel threw the party, without asking, and used my mother's credit card to buy alcohol and other stuff totaling about $3,500. The crazy part is that my parents didn't find out about the party from the credit card charges, which, by the way, included an ice sculpture of an elephant in the living room, but when they came home and saw the destruction. Let's just say the elephant had melted and ruined the hardwood floors, and you can probably imagine the rest. One of the bathrooms was clogged, another had the toilet somehow removed and left overturned in the hallway, a window had been shattered by a flower pot thrown from outside, and the kitchen looked like a war zone of trash, broken dishes, and who knows what else. Honestly, the credit card bill wasn't even the worst part, the property damage totaled around $15,000. The floors need replacing, walls need repainting, windows need repairs, and both bathrooms probably need professional decontamination. I can't deny it, it must have been the party of the year. I'm just glad it wasn't at my place. I don't know who she invited, maybe a demolition crew, but 2 weeks later, when my parents were still trying to figure out how to deal with it, they went crying to my grandparents for financial help. They had already spent a good amount on their little vacation, which hadn't exactly relaxed them, and my grandparents, being the terrible people they are, made things worse by laughing and telling them they wouldn't pay for a thing. Not only did they refuse to help, they actually laughed hysterically over the fact that Ariel had trashed their house. They even asked for photos, and my parents, trying to gain sympathy, showed them, only for my grandparents to laugh even harder. My grandfather asked them to send the pictures to his phone, but my parents weren't falling for that twice. Unfortunately, I haven't seen the photos myself, so I'll have to take my grandparents' word for it. They told me, imagine the worst scene you can after a party. Now imagine something worse. I believe them, especially since my sister's been radio silent on social media ever since. My parents hadn't decided what to do with her, at least not until they talked to my grandparents, but at some point, you've got to draw the line. If it were me, I'd kick her out and sue her until she didn't have a single eyelash left. But that's me, I don't have a toxic relationship with her. My grandparents feel the same way. Speaking of them, they came to the conference, and it was amazing to see their faces in the audience. I'm pretty sure they didn't understand a single word I said, but they came anyway because they're proud of me and they love me. If I didn't know better, I'd say I'd throw a party with an ice sculpture in the middle of the room to show them my love, but thankfully, I've developed healthier ways to express affection. Yeah, a Little Mermaid sculpture would have been more fitting for my sister. And if my thank you party for my grandparents ever became real, you can bet there'd be one, with a talking crab included. Update 5. Final. I wanted to give you all one last update since many have been wondering what my parents ended up doing with my sister after she cost them nearly $20,000. Well, technically, it was closer to $15,000, but I doubt that makes my parents feel any better. Life's actually much better than I ever expected. My parents kicked my sister out of the house and demanded that she repay them for all the repairs. She's had to take out a second mortgage to cover the costs, plus the interest on the credit card debt that's been piling up. She'll have to handle all of it, or at least my parents hope she will. She has a low-paying job and now a pile of expenses wherever she's living. Sadly for me, her social media silence means the gossip faucet has run dry. Whether she pays or not will probably take ages, and I can't imagine doing monthly updates like, she paid $100 this month. Maybe in 45 years, when my dad's beard is down to his feet and my mom's too, because that's how I picture them, and my sister is a senior citizen mermaid, I'll be able to post a final update saying, my sister finally paid off every cent of that party from her 20s. But odds are she won't. My parents will probably forgive the debt, and somewhere in between, the robots and AI will have formed an alliance and we'll all be gone. Either way, I'm signing off. Maybe I'll see you again in the trenches of the robot wars, or in another battle. Because the war against entitled people? That one's still not over.